around human-centered design, and I'll be definitely referencing that, Shannon, as we go forward. Good morning. My name is Grant Wallace, and from Improved Apps, and I actually started working for Salesforce themselves here in London in 2007, so about 15 years ago. And what we find so often in our Salesforce projects is that we've got them up and running. Perhaps new people have joined, and people say, a newcomer to the team, hey, listen, don't worry, just log in. If you get stuck, just shout. Yeah, we've got something sort of similar to the Salesforce screens. It's kind of the same as the regular Salesforce app. There might even be some slightly out of date PDFs or PowerPoint training slides in the company intranet pages or SharePoint. But for myself, the greatest successes I've found in implementing Salesforce projects, mainly in banking and in the capital markets sector, is really focusing on business outcomes. And that seems to resonate most with the users. It's their language. It means it's most meaningful to them. And I wanted to begin today by telling a story. I hope there's some racing fans out there. I apologize to those who are not racing fans. But if we think of our business outcomes in a very similar way to how sports teams think of car racing, if they want to win the race, if they want to win the championship, it not only involves the car being the very best, the driver has to be at their very best as well. So this is just a lighthearted story. It's just going back a couple of weeks here in the UK in the World Formula One Championship. Carlos Sainz, this gentleman here, won his first Formula One race in over 150 races. But more importantly, let's see how we can think of our users like Carlos. And if we can train our users like Formula One teams train their drivers, then hopefully we'll have some great business outcomes. For me, if today I just went and drove a Ferrari Formula One car out the pit lane, I would barely get past the first corner in the track. So it's really important that it's not just about the quality of the app that we build, but the quality of the training that they give our users. And as we all know, at this level of athlete, Olympic athletes are the same. It's not just about the big chunks of training that we get, it's about the 1% continuous improvement. And if we could think about our team, they've done a great job, they've built a great car, they've gone through the Jira board, they've got all the user cases completed, it's ready to be used, the Salesforce application is ready to be used by the users. And the reason I say users instead of employees, because you've got Salesforce self-service as well, which no doubt many of you are either using or are thinking about using Experience Cloud as well. So those users might extend to your own customers, your own partners, your own suppliers, or even your own staff if you're using Salesforce for like an HR type of application, like for travel approval, that type of thing. So how do we get the business outcomes that we need? And we've built this great application. Here it is. It looks absolutely stunning, but there's one thing missing. It's the users. And it's really important that we think about these users. We think about the super users. We think about the pilot users, but we think of all the users. And I wanted to think about this example here in a multicultural context as well. Because no doubt for many of you here with us at CenCal Dreamin, that you don't just have users in Fresno, right? You get users globally in different languages and in different cultures in different roles. The example we've got here is your Ferrari from Italy. I'm sure I don't need to tell that to anyone on the call. We've got on the left there Charles Leclerc, who's a a Monegasque person from Monaco. And on the right, we've got Carlos Sainz himself that we looked at earlier, and he's from Spain. So we've got Italian, French, Spanish, and we know this team speak English as well. So you've already got 4 languages that you need to be supporting in our Salesforce application. And maybe we've got a sandbox. We'll let them go out on the track. We'll let them try this thing out, this great new Salesforce application we've built. We get them back into the pits. We get the feedback from those super users, from those pilot users. Some final tweaks, before we go live. But I'd love to zoom in for a moment here. Just take this moment to zoom in to look at that driver and look at those eyes. These are that's the face of a person who is focused. They're ready to go. They're thinking about the business outcomes. And I like this is, in Shannon's presentation just earlier about human-centered design. We've really got to think about what's in that person's mind right now and what they need to achieve the ultimate business outcomes. I mean, not to be flippant about it, when you see a racing driver like this right now, this is not the time for his engineer to give him, a 100-page PDF file to have a quick browse through before he starts the race. But the big day comes. Got first place on the track. We're ready to go. Now, this is after hours, perhaps days, weeks, months of configuration and building and integration with multiple other systems. We're now at prod go live, so we need to make it happen. And I wanted to use this example of 3 cars. This example is of them just having come out of one corner at over 150 miles an hour. And look how close they are. They're not even a car length apart from each other. You've got your competitors, and this is what it's like for our users. You think of that human-centered design. It's about what's on their mind right now, and they're very focused when they're doing well over 150 miles around a corner, when they've got the competitors literally side by side. So it might be in a sales context. A salesperson's trying to close a deal, and they've got competitors swarming around trying to disrupt that deal. It could be on a service context, where you've got an agent out in the field and they've got to resolve this issue ASAP because it's holding up the client's business, whether it's a production system or it's an airline or whatever that might be. It's having direct impact. They've got to make it happen. They've got to deliver that service. But these people are very focused on those business outcomes. They've got to make it happen. And I wanted just to take you inside the car. And this is the actual view, if you like, the eyes of our user. And that's what I think is so great about human-centered design is this is actually a small camera from inside Carlos Sainz's helmet. He's just gone through one bend at 150, swept round to the right. He's now about to sweep round to the left. We saw in the previous image just how close his competitors are. And think about what he has, think about what our users have in their hands. What they have here is a control system, we would call it in the old days a steering wheel. It still steers the car, but it's got so many other buttons on it that are there to help the driver to control the car, to update systems if the engine's starting to overheat or whatever else that we want the driver to have control over. And it's got a screen with it, and the data that's on that screen, the information that's on that screen is exactly what they need for where they are in the race at this very point in time, based on the changes to the settings the driver's making in real time. Every pixel is thought of there. That's true human-centered design. You're really thinking about the business outcome. But the great thing here is that through this effort, it's not just about the driver, it's about the team. Look at those faces of all those engineers and all the other project members, that when someone wins, it's just a great feeling. It's not just for that one user, it's for all the users and their success and the wider team. And I think the thing that helped me most of all was interesting was this expression, vamos. And, as you know, it's we go. It's what is this? This was the words that were shouted through the radio to Carlos by his engineer. Carlos already thanked the team that he had said it was a great team effort, but the response from his engineer was "Vamos, we go," and I thought that really helps us to deliver great adoption and therefore by the adoption get great business outcomes because we're all working as one. We're thinking about the success of the overall of our overall team, and this is great. What a result! But these 1% improvements are so important, but it's not always like this. And I think the reality for a lot of the Salesforce projects today is that the users are struggling. Now, I've taken this, snapshot of a picture. I know the driver was safe, everyone was kept safe, and thankfully everyone was okay. So I felt it was okay to show this picture, but you can just feel, that's what some of our users feel when they're using our applications we've been building for them, that it just doesn't deliver for them. And this is how they feel. They just don't feel they've got that support around them. They feel that they're left on their own, and it really doesn't help with adoption, and definitely doesn't help get the right business outcomes. For Carlos, it was to win his next race. For our users, it's to close their next deal on Salesforce. It's to close that customer query, to make that customer happy, or to approve that new travel expense that's been made in Salesforce. Whatever use case we've got in Salesforce, we've got to think about why people are using Salesforce in their day-to-day job. Now, if we look at if we look at the stats on this, 63% of CRM initiatives are failing today. Is it because we're not giving them a great CRM system? Is it not because, whatever investments we're making, it's not that. The reality is it's poor adoption is the big challenge. And we want to look at that in this presentation. And even if you just take that one timestamp of just 1 month in, so you think there's still the buzz of, we've got the project live, with already within 1 month, we've only got about 30%, you might say, are aspiring users in the system. 70%, close to 3/4 of users are really not engaged with what we've built, and therefore we're not delivering the business outcomes we need. What we found is some of the challenges with this is that nearly half our employees are hybrid. That almost goes without saying. We all understand that. So people feel alone because they're not in an office, they're not in an environment where they can, reach to colleagues. Perhaps there's not a super user or a pilot user near at hand to reach out to and ask how to process, this case in the system or whatever is the use case. Time is one of the biggest challenges now because people are finding they're being asked to get even more work done because, companies can perhaps not employ. They've been using this digitization process to actually reduce headcount and to try and streamline the business. So what we're finding is that a lot of the learning on new systems is being done out of core working hours. What's crazy is to get to use the systems, people are spending a lot of time searching for content to, how can I resolve this issue? But also the type of content we've been giving people is, more is, if in doubt, give them more content. But actually what people are now saying is that, don't give me courseware, give me digestible content, and we'll touch on that in more detail. And one of the big challenges, and if you think of, is that a lot of businesses are if you think of the whole change management challenge here, businesses are able to streamline, come up with new ideas of doing business. Perhaps they're saying, actually, we're not going to have all these physical offices, we're going to put everything online. But the challenge is for the staff to actually move. It's always, the biggest challenge for any business is change management. How do we bring the team with us? And these are some of the challenges that people have at this time. And think of this in the example I was using of like Ferrari. They've made improvements to the car, they made the engine more powerful, they've improved the aerodynamics. But is the driver capable? Has he been trained to take advantage of all these new settings or updates we've made on the car? And the challenge is that people today just have so many interruptions through their day. are needing increasingly just small bite-sized chunks to get their work done. They want the right information, but also, and this is for me coming from my, uh, you know, doing projects in banking, that it's any industry where compliance is a big thing. The risk of not being compliant is something that's extremely concerning for not just the bank, but for all the staff, because it could have big impact on things like fines. So how can we help users? A lot of pressure on them in whatever context they're working, whether they're in the office, in a cafe somewhere, they're traveling, or at home. And how can we help them to be happy and be effective? So the first thing we would say is, and this relates to human-centered design, is think of them like you would a customer. Think about what's in their mind when they're trying to use the system. So the content should be related to them. I know certainly in our own projects, one of the challenges was content was being given to users, which was, the project team understood, because we had the context, we understood all the detail of how the system worked, but a lot of that is really not relevant. The end user just needs those golden nuggets to help them get their job done. They don't really care about all the background and how all the integration works and lots of the detail of the how. It's just, what's the very specific thing I need to help me to get this job done? And let's just go back just briefly. Let's think about Carlos Sainz in that Ferrari racing car. He's got a very, very specific view on what he needs in his hands when he's using the Salesforce application. And just to emphasize on this, one of our clients, again, the financial sector, was saying that to us that this is one of the greatest challenges they had, was that providing learning at the speed of business today is by far their greatest challenge, and it needs to be integrated. So we can't have training in one place and not the other. And I just want to touch on this because again, like many of you no doubt here, one of the challenges we've had is when we're doing our projects, there's a lot of positivity, a lot of investment on training. Everyone's getting trained up. Senior management executives understand the importance of this. But as soon as the go live happens, things still keep changing. People change roles, people leave the firm, we have new staff join. And instead of having the learning curve, we call it the forgetting curve. And what's really important here is, how do we maintain the level of training? Because our business processes are changing, our business outcomes are always changing. None of these things stand still. And what the users, and we've touched on this already, but the users need instant access. They don't want to be going searching. They need something that's, this is an expression that we get from users all the time. Just give me the golden nuggets, which is just what's easy to consume, what's relevant for what I'm doing right now in the application. But what they also need to be able to do is give us feedback really quickly. So when they're using the Salesforce app, they need to be able to just be able to click on something to give us that feedback, and not have to feel they've got to stop, go to their email system, write an email. Whatever the context was, they need to be able to give us that feedback, whether that's good feedback or negative feedback or constructive feedback for improvements in the future. So the big thing here is that context is king. And the reason I say that is because we need to think about the role that person has. Okay, if it's a sales app, we're using Salesforce for our sales function. Not everyone in sales is a salesperson. You have engineers, you have people who are dealing with contracts. There's lots of different roles, even just within that one area, and similar in service and in other areas of the business that we're using Salesforce. So thinking about the role is really important. Why is this person using the application? Language is really important. Certainly, we found for our customers that improved apps, global rollouts typically have at least sort of 5 different languages that need to be supported. And it's not just the language, but it's the thinking about, is this just a new employee or is this an existing employee, but we've just changed the process? So our help nugget should take all that into consideration. We should also be data driven. So based on the data that's in the Salesforce application, and I'll show this on the screen, but say I'm in sales and I'm running through an opportunity. and I change my competitor from one to another, I want competitive information there in the opportunity that's relevant to me, not the 300 other competitors that I might have on other deals. It's just got to be those nuggets that are absolutely applicable about that specific primary competitor that's going to help me. That's the data I want to consume. That's all I can consume at this point in time. So the key thing we would say here is that the the way that we can drive the success is the old adage of the 80-20 rule, and that is about finding that 20% of your content that 80% of the users are either positively or negatively finding useful. A lot of content just perishes. It was huge effort when we were doing our projects and making sure all that content was created, but we need to be able to measure how that content is being consumed. And think about the user's moment of need. That's why it's so important to be focusing on user-centered design. So keep it short and sweet. And really important as well is demonstrate your listening, because if you're not, the users will switch off, they'll stop giving us that feedback, and therefore we can't continue to help them get the right content, the right help and guidance to get adoption up in the system, to get those business outcomes. So I do have a question, if you could share in the chat. How much of your time do you spend every week searching for the right information? So it could be on the Salesforce applications. Feel free to share that. But just generally in your business applications you're using, how much time are you using for searching? So we'll I just conscious of time, be very happy to look at that just at the end of the presentation. I talked about the continuous improvement, with the Ferrari racing driver, with Carlos, and what we tend to find with Olympic athletes and any form of high performance individual is that they very rarely are looking at sort of making massive changes. I recall one Olympic athlete telling us when we were at Salesforce that she and her team were in the Olympics and they heard that titanium rivets were actually slightly lighter than the rivets they had in their boat, and they literally undid hundreds of rivets and installed titanium rivets instead, because that gave them seconds improvement or hundreds of seconds of improvement. So it's all those 1% improvements. And I won't go into all the detail here, but if we think about the change management aspect of this, that we change something in the business, we need to update the content on that. We need to review that content with the business, make sure it's in a language, it's expressed in a way that's really important, that's consumable by the business users, that they understand it and allows them to get their job done. We target the communications. Let's not use email for that. Let's use Salesforce as an application to create these alerts, because that's where the user is. Let's not ask them to leave the Salesforce application. The users are interacting with the application. They're wanting guidance in the flow. So any updates to a process, maybe an approval process, we need to be able to guide them through that. And then we get the user feedback. Have we improved it, folks? What other improvements could we make? And again, we get that audit, we get the reports and dashboards, and we then make further reports. Again, it's just all these 1% add up, as any athlete will tell us. So I just wanted to touch on, having looked at some of those challenges that we've found, some of those core areas of challenge and what we can do about it. I just wanted to touch briefly on, for us, Improved Apps and what we do. We Improved Apps is we're a top-rated digital adoption solution on Salesforce App Exchange. So please feel free to go there and check us out. And if I could create a tagline, if you like, it's we make Salesforce much easier to use. For us, the reason we're able to make Salesforce much easier to use is because we're 100% built on Salesforce. We're 100% native. So whether you're using Salesforce Lightning, or you're even using Salesforce Classic, if you're using Salesforce Experience Cloud, or Financial Services Cloud, and the other industry verticals. If you're using Salesforce Mobile, we can work and we do work in all these and are used by our clients in all these different areas. But the big thing for us really is that it's about keeping your data secure, that there's no data leakage, that when you're driving all these adoption metrics, you don't want that information leaking out and going to another cloud that perhaps your compliance team haven't, certified or put the rubber stamp on. And I know for myself, in working in a compliance sensitive industry like banking or others like health, it's really, really important to know that your data is secure. And Salesforce gives us that world-class infrastructure to make sure that our data is all kept safe. But we also want it so that it's just easy for you to get up and running. So our application takes minutes to install from AppExchange, either into your production system, or you may actually want to start by using a sandbox. And I wanted just to show you some screens of just what it looks like. You'll probably say to yourself, well, this is just a standard Salesforce opportunity screen. And you're absolutely right. We just fit in there. I've just put a box in red just to highlight the example we've got here of a field called primary competitor. In that field, we've put business objects. So what you'll see there is that the help, that nugget of help, that moment of need, that moment of learning is right here in the Salesforce opportunity screen. I'm not having to go to another screen. I'm not seeing all the other competitors. As a salesperson, my primary competitor I've identified and I need to really think about that might block me closing my deal is business objects. So what I see here is all the information we've gathered about business objects. So this is like a summary, like a nugget of the key data. But if I need to, perhaps I'm new, perhaps I've not competed with business objects before, I can then go to other places. For example, Trailhead, and you can see Trailhead here. Perhaps we've got a SharePoint site for all our competitor information, and we call this signposting. A lot of our customers do it. They use us to capture a lot of that core data within Salesforce, but they often have other sites that are still continuing to be updated. So, one click, the user's not having to search. It's just one click, and it takes them to these different environments. Now, let's just take that screen, but let's change the competitor. This time, I'm not competing in this deal with business objects. I'm competing with Microsoft. And what you see here is all the information we have about Microsoft, even, for example, having embedded video baked right into the Salesforce Lightning page for opportunities. It's not asking me to go to another screen to do that. But this is what I was mentioning earlier about we've got to give nuggets of help based on my role, based on my language, based on the data that I've got in the system. These are really important to help drive adoption. I'd also just wanted to touch on that the experience for the users should be consistent. And we hear from Salesforce that we're the only company, Improved Apps is the only company that's able to do this. And that is to have this type of, because we're native to Salesforce, we're built on Salesforce, that we can, as you can see here, as a salesperson, I can see my deal, whether I'm on my laptop or my mobile. And it's the same for Experience Cloud as well. So another thing for us just to, question I wanted to ask around your content is, think about all the places your users need to find content today. Think of the time they would spend to go and garner together. If I just take the example of we're using of a salesperson and they're competing against business objects or Microsoft or whoever that might be, how long would it take them, and would they know that was all the right information, the most relevant information for them? Wouldn't it be great if you could just get that content and surface it at the right moment, at the right time, right into my Salesforce screens? We did have some customers who have taken a lot of that content that was in PDF files. One customer had literally hundreds of pages of PDFs, and through our importer, we're actually able to not only bring all that information and keep it as one, but we're actually also able to break it down into those nuggets, so that users were getting that one page view, if you like, that key data for the help that was required for their part of the system. And I want to now show you my favorite part, and the reason I joined the team at Improved Apps, dashboards. I'm sure there's not a single person here who doesn't know dashboards in Salesforce. Well, that's what we use because we're 100% native, because we've had all this, the security clearance from Salesforce to be on App Exchange. You can see here, when I joined, I said to Simon, our CEO, our co-founder, I said, Simon, I wish I had these dashboards, when I was working in different banks, and being able to present this to the stakeholders. Because often I would be showing them things like, oh, here's the number of times users logged in, here's the number of records they created, here's the number of records they edited. Now, that's all super important. I'm not undermining that at all. But they were like, well, that's what you're telling me, just they've logged in. How can I see where they're going in the application? And so because we're native, you can capture all that data about not just, for example, what pages people go to, but the areas of the page they go to. You can see here who's giving us the feedback. So none of this involves someone creating new records. It's just how people are interacting with the system and the value they're getting from it. We can see, again, to that 80-20 rule we talked about, the guidance on that is to focus on that 20% of content that people get the most value from. You can see that here in the help topics. And then you can see here, and I'm just really going through the different pages on this one dashboard, really just to give you a sense of where people are getting the value and the value you can get to help your users to improve the adoption. So who's our most engaged users, and what are people searching for, again, and what people bookmarking. Again, all this information is really important. Now, I'm really coming to an end here. I just wanted to touch on and come back to this thought, though, of overall the business outcomes, not just across sales, but across service and people. And what I would say here is that for sort of a $40,000 investment in improved apps, what our customers are getting is at least a conservative estimate of about $2 million support in training costs, support and training costs alone. So I want to just come back to, how can we make all our users winners? And if we make all our users winners, then the team can say, vamos, let's go for it. So I really appreciate your time this morning. And I'm very happy to take questions and answers. Please go to App Exchange. Our digital adoption specialists are on there on App Exchange chat. If you want to have any questions there, if you want to install a test drive, feel free to do that as well. But I'm now here for if there's any questions that you might have. So I just wanted to just touch on one of them there, Evan. I noticed that it was interesting to see from, I'm just looking at the chat, where Deborah was saying, Deborah McKenzie was saying that about 30% of her time is spent on searching. And, that's a huge amount of time. So hopefully that's something that, improved apps could help with by having that content, those nuggets in the right place. And then just another one there from Martin. You're saying you're a developer there, Martin. You're using it for your expenses and the compliance rule changes. I'm with you. Compliance never it never stands still. It's always changing. There's always things we need to be very careful of when we're putting our expenses in. I had that myself. You're coming from working in the bank, so a great example there. So thank you for all the feedback. Vamos to you all. I wish you all the very best. And look, feel free to reach out to me. At the beginning, I'm on LinkedIn. Very happy. Even if you're not looking at improved apps today, but you're just looking for some guidance and some help. There's Salesforce Trailhead as well. We're great fans of Salesforce Trailhead. If there's anything that we can help, even if it's not directly related to our application on App Exchange, um, just want to help you to be successful and get great user adoption. Thanks.